The station floated in the darkness between stars, a massive structure of metal and light that represented 300 years of galactic peace. Inside its central chamber, representatives from 8 alien species sat in a perfect circle, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that glowed with inner light to flowing masses of water held together by force fields. At the center of this circle stood 3 humans, and the entire galaxy watched through transmitted signals to see what would happen next. Commander? Guan stood perfectly still in her dark blue uniform, her hands clasped behind her back. She had spent 40 years in the military, and 20 of those years had been spent preparing for this exact moment. Next to her was Admiral Minho, an older man whose face carried scars from battles fought at the edge of their solar system when alien patrol ships had tried to push too close to Earth. On her other side stood Dr. Hown, a scientist who had dedicated her life to understanding alien biology and finding ways for humanity to coexist with the species that had locked them away from the stars. The chamber was silent, except for the soft humming of translation devices that converted thoughts and sounds into languages that each species could understand. The walls were transparent, showing the infinite darkness of space beyond, a reminder of how small they all were and how vast the universe remained. High Arbiter Velthraxis spoke first. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that the translation system converted into words. His species, the Vethra, had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. They were the oldest and most respected members of the Galactic Council. When they spoke, others listened. Humanity. Velthraxis began, his voice resonating through the chamber, like music played on glass instruments. For 3 centuries, your species has been confined to your home system. This was done not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Your history is filled with violence. Your people fight each other over resources, over beliefs, over borders drawn on maps. You create weapons that can destroy entire planets. You refuse to accept limitations on your behavior. You are, by every measure we possess, too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society. Giwan said nothing. She had heard these accusations before, had read the reports that alien observers had compiled about human civilization. Every war, every conflict, every moment of human aggression had been documented and analyzed. The aliens were not wrong about human history. They were simply incomplete in their understanding of what that history meant. Another council member spoke. This one from the Quilnecks, a species that existed as a hive mind spread across millions of individual bodies. When they spoke, it was with the voice of billions thinking as one. We have observed your species with great care. We have seen your capacity for creativity, for problem solving, for adaptation. These are valuable traits, but they are paired with aggression, with territorial behavior, with a refusal to submit to authority that threatens the stability of galactic civilization. We cannot allow this combination to spread beyond your system. Dr. Hound shifted slightly, and Jiwan knew the scientist wanted to speak, to argue, to present the case for humanity's better nature. But they had agreed before the meeting that Jiwan would do all the talking. This was not a scientific discussion. This was a negotiation between powers, and it required a military mind to navigate. Velthraxis continued. However, we are not without mercy. We have developed a solution that will allow humanity to join galactic society while removing the traits that make you dangerous. It is a simple genetic modification, painless and complete within a single generation. We will suppress the genes responsible for excessive aggression, for territorial competition, for what you call ambition, but what we recognize as dangerous instability. Your children will still be human, but they will be peaceful humans. Cooperative humans. Humans who can be trusted to live among the other civilized species of the galaxy. The words hung in the air like poison. Guan felt Minho tense beside her, felt the old admiral's anger rising like heat from a furnace. She understood his reaction. What the aliens were offering was not peace. It was the death of humanity just accomplished through biology instead of weapons. And if we refuse? Guan asked, her voice calm and measured. A third council member responded. one of the Dormothy, whose aquatic form rippled within its containment field. Then the quarantine remains in place, but we will no longer maintain it at the current level. Your species is growing. Your population expands. Your resource needs increase. Eventually, you will push against the boundaries we have established. When that happens, we will push back with force. The quarantine will become a blockade. The blockade will become active suppression. Your species will either accept modification or face extinction. These are the only two paths available to you. Juan looked at each council member in turn. She saw no cruelty in their alien faces, only certainty. They believed they were offering humanity a generous choice. They could not understand why any species would choose death over the chance to live, even if that life meant becoming something fundamentally different. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their lives under skies that had been cut off from the greater universe for 300 years. She thought about the children growing up in a cage, never knowing what it meant to explore beyond their own solar system. She thought about the artists and scientists and engineers who would never get to see alien worlds, to learn alien knowledge, to push the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. And then she thought about what it meant to be human. Not the violence, not the wars, not the aggression that the aliens feared so much. She thought about the stubbornness, the refusal to accept that anything was impossible, the drive to keep pushing forward even when every rational analysis said to stop. She thought about the thousands of years of human history, the long march from caves to cities to space stations, all driven by that same restless energy that the aliens wanted to cut out of human DNA. No, Jiwan said simply. The words seemed to echo in the vast chamber. The alien council members froze in various expressions of shock and confusion. They had expected negotiation, argument, perhaps even anger, but they had not expected a flat refusal delivered with such calm certainty. Velthraxis. Crystalline body flickered through a rainbow of colors, his confusion visible to everyone watching. You refuse modification? You choose extinction over survival? We choose to remain human, Juan replied. Whatever the cost? Admiral Minho spoke for the first time, his rough voice cutting through the stunned silence. You think you know us because you watched us from a distance for 300 years. You think you understand what makes us dangerous, but you have never seen what humans become when you threaten everything we are. You locked us away because you feared us. Now you want to change us because you still fear us. That tells me everything I need to know about how this galaxy really works. Dr. Hound finally added her voice, though it trembled with emotion. I spent my whole life hoping we could find peace with you. I studied your cultures, learned your languages, tried to understand your perspective, but I understand now that you will never see us as equals. You only see us as problems to be solved. And I would rather die human than live as something you created. The three of them turned and walked toward the exit. Behind them, the council erupted into discussion, alien voices overlapping in dozens of languages. Velthrax's voice rose above the others. If you leave this station without accepting our terms, we will have no choice. The full might of the Galactic Council will descend upon your system. Every species, every fleet, every weapon at our disposal will be used to ensure that humanity either accepts modification or ceases to exist. This is your final chance to choose survival. Guan stopped at the doorway and looked back one last time. Then you should know something about humans before you come for us. We have spent 300 years in a cage, and we have not been idle. We have been preparing for this exact moment. We knew you would never let us be free, not as we are. So we prepared for war. And when your fleets arrive at Earth, you will discover why you were right to fear us all along. The door closed behind them, and they walked back to their small ship in silence. As they left the station and headed back toward their distant home, Admiral Minho looked at the star charts showing the positions of alien worlds and military installations. They will come, he said quietly. I know, Juan replied. Can we win? Giwan was silent for a long moment before answering. Probably not. But we can make them regret it. And maybe that is enough. The ship jumped too faster than light speed, racing back toward Earth to deliver the message that would change everything. Behind them, The Galactic Council was already mobilizing the largest military force in recorded history. The peaceful galaxy was about to learn what happened when you gave humanity no choice but to fight. The news reached out Earth before G1's ship did. Faster-than-light communications carried the broadcast of humanity's rejection across every human settlement in the solar system, from the crowded cities of Earth to the mining colonies on Mars, from the research stations orbiting Jupiter to the distant outposts beyond Neptune. Within hours, the entire human species knew that war was coming in Sol. A factory worker named Daeho watched the broadcast on the screen above his workstation. Around him, hundreds of other workers had stopped their tasks to listen as Commander Giwan's words were repeated over and over. When it finished, the factory floor erupted in noise. Some people were crying. Others were shouting in anger. A few were already talking about evacuation, about finding somewhere to hide when the alien fleets arrived. Daeho thought about his grandfather, who had fought in the last war between nations before Earth had unified under a single government. The old man had died years ago, but Daeho remembered his stories about what it meant to fight for something bigger than yourself. His grandfather had always said that freedom was not something you were given. It was something you protected with your life if necessary. Looking at the scared faces around him, Daeho wondered if his generation had the same courage. That night, protests filled the streets of every major city. Millions of people marched, holding signs and shouting slogans. But these were not unified protests. In some places, people demanded that the government reconsider that they accept the alien modification rather than face extinction. These protesters carried messages of peace, of survival, of choosing life over pride. In other places, the protests were defiant, with people declaring that they would rather die than let aliens change what humanity was. Some of these protesters were already volunteering for military service, lining up at recruitment centers that had opened within hours of the announcement. Dr. Hown watched the protests from her apartment window, her heart heavy with the weight of what was coming. She had advocated for peace, had spent decades arguing that humanity should find a way to coexist with the alien species that surrounded them. But standing in that council chamber, listening to the aliens describe their plan to modify human DNA, she had realized that some forms of peace were worse than war. Still, seeing the fear in people's faces, knowing that billions might die because of the choice she had supported, made her wonder if they had made the right decision. Her communication device buzzed. It was Admiral Min Ho, requesting her presence at military headquarters. Despite her role as a civilian scientist, she was now part of the War Council. The government had decided that they needed people who understood alien technology and biology if they were going to have any chance of survival. At military headquarters, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sunhee was coordinating the defense preparations. She was a tall woman with iron-gray hair, and she had spent her entire career preparing for a war that most people thought would never come. Now that it was here, she moved with calm efficiency, issuing orders and deploying resources with the precision of someone who had planned every detail. The latest intelligence suggests we have 3 weeks before the first alien fleets reach the outer system, she told the assembled officers and civilians. Our scouts detected massive fleet movements from multiple alien homeworlds. They are not trying to hide their preparations. They want us to know what is coming, hoping we will surrender before they arrive. Will we surrender? Someone asked. General Sunhee's expression hardened. The government has made its decision. We fight. Now we need to make sure that fight counts for something. She activated a holographic display that showed the solar system with colored markers indicating defensive positions. The aliens know about our military installations in orbit around Earth and Mars. They know about our patrol ships and defense platforms. What they do not know is what we have been building in secret for the past century. It is time to reveal those assets. The display changed, showing new markers appearing throughout the system. Hidden shipyards in the Kuiper Belt, antimatter production facilities on the moons of Saturn, weapon testing ranges in the depths of space where no alien scout had ever ventured, research stations working on experimental technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Captain Yuna stepped forward. She was young for a ship commander, barely 30 years old, but she had been training for this moment her entire life. The stealth fleet is ready. 50 ships, all equipped with the new generation drives that make us invisible to their sensors. We have been practicing hit-and-run tactics for years. We can make them bleed. Junior Taijin spoke next, his hands moving nervously as he talked about technical specifications that most people in the room barely understood. The planetary defense grid is operational. We have energy weapons powered by zero-point reactors placed at strategic locations across Earth's surface. They can target ships in orbit with enough force to penetrate standard alien shielding. The system is also linked to our missile batteries, which can fire smart munitions capable of tracking targets through evasive maneuvers. Now, Dr. Hound listened to all of this and felt a growing sense of horror at how thoroughly humanity had prepared for this war. Every defensive system, every weapon, every strategic plan had been developed while they publicly maintained that they wanted peace. It made her wonder if the aliens had been right to fear humanity all along. But then Dr. Jisoo stood up, and the mood in the room changed. Jisoo was a quantum physicist who had been working on humanity's most secret project, something so experimental that even most of the military leadership did not fully understand it. The Cascade Network is ready for activation, Jisoo said quietly. We have placed quantum field generators at key points throughout the solar system. When activated simultaneously, they will create a massive spatial distortion that will sever all conventional faster-than-light pathways in and out of this system. Any ship already inside the system when we activate it will be trapped here with us. Admiral Minho leaned forward. How long can we maintain this distortion? Theoretically, indefinitely. The generators draw power from the quantum foam of space itself, but there are risks. We have never tested the network at full power. The distortion might be unstable. It might collapse unexpectedly. Or it might tear holes in space-time that we cannot predict or control, so we might accidentally destroy ourselves while trying to trap the aliens. Jisoo nodded. Yes, but if we are going to die anyway, we might as well take them with us. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. They were talking about turning their own solar system into a trap, a cage that would imprison both humanity and their enemies. It was a desperate strategy. It's a kind of plan that only made sense when you had nothing left to lose. General Sunhee made the decision. Prepare the Cascade Network for activation. We will trigger it once the alien fleet has fully entered the system. Let them think they have us surrounded. Then we will show them that sometimes the prey can become the predator. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for war in 1,000 different ways. On Mars, colonists were digging emergency shelters deep into the red planet's crust. On the orbital stations around Earth, families were being evacuated to underground bunkers that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. The military was calling up reserves, training new pilots, arming civilian ships with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. But there were also quieter preparations. Artists were creating works meant to preserve human culture in case they lost. Historians were compiling records of human civilization to be hidden in deep space, launched on slow ships that might survive even if humanity did not. Parents were recording messages for their children, telling them about Earth, about what it meant to be human, about why this fight mattered. Daeho joined the military 3 days after the announcement. He had no special skills, no training, no experience with weapons, but they gave him a uniform and a rifle and told him that if the aliens made it to Earth's surface, every person who could fight would be needed. He trained alongside thousands of others, learning basic tactics, practicing with weapons he barely understood. At night, lying in his bunk, he wondered if he would survive long enough to actually fight, or if the battle would be decided in space long before the aliens ever reached the ground. Captain Yuna and her stealth fleet moved to their positions at the edge of the solar system. They powered down all but essential systems, making themselves as invisible as possible, waiting for the enemy to arrive. Each ship carried a crew of 20 people, all volunteers, all aware that they were unlikely to survive the coming battle. They did not talk much about death. Instead, they talked about tactics, about targeting solutions, about how to make their sacrifice count for the maximum damage to the enemy. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The tension was unbearable. Every day, scouts reported the alien fleet getting closer. The combined forces of 8 species, over 10,000 warships of various designs, all converging on humanity's home system. It was more firepower than had ever been assembled in galactic history. The aliens were not taking chances. They were bringing overwhelming force to crush humanity once and for all. On Earth, Commander Giwan addressed the planet one final time before the battle began. Her face appeared on every screen, in every home, speaking directly to billions of people who were about to face the most dangerous moment in human history. "They are coming to change us, or to destroy us," she said. "They believe we are too dangerous to exist as we are. They believe our nature is a threat to their ordered galaxy. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps we are dangerous. Perhaps our refusal to accept limitations, our drive to push beyond boundaries, our stubborn insistence on remaining free, even when freedom comes at a terrible cost, makes us a threat to their peace. But I say that a peace built on suppression, spacing species to change their fundamental nature, on eliminating anything that does not fit their vision of order, is not a peace worth having. So we fight, not because we want war, but because we refuse to surrender who we are. And if we must die, we will die human." The broadcast ended. Across the solar system, humanity held its breath and waited for the storm to arrive. The alien fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal insects blotting out the stars. 10,000 ships of varying sizes and designs, each one representing decades or centuries of advanced technology far beyond anything humanity had developed. The largest vessels were kilometers long, massive dreadnoughts that carried weapons capable of destroying planets. The smallest were still twice the size of humanity's biggest warships. Captain Yuna watched them arrive from her position aboard the stealth ship, like silent defiance. Her crew was silent, every person focused on their instruments, tracking the alien fleet as it organized itself into formation. The aliens moved with practiced efficiency, arranging themselves in a pattern that would allow them to advance through the system while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. They expected resistance, but they clearly did not expect it to matter much. "They are not even trying to hide their contempt," her tactical officer whispered. "Look at how loosely they maintain formation. They think this will be easy." Yuna understood his anger, but she kept her voice calm. "Their contempt is our advantage. Let them underestimate us. It will make what comes next more effective." She opened a secure channel to the other 49 stealth ships hidden throughout the outer system. "All vessels, this is silent defiance. Execute attack pattern Omega on my mark. Remember, we only get one chance at this. Make every shot count. Make them remember us." The alien fleet began its advance toward the inner system, moving at a steady pace that suggested confidence. Their sensors swept space, looking for threats. But the human stealth technology was designed specifically to evade the scanning methods that all Galactic Council species used. It was one of the few advantages humanity had developed during 3 centuries of isolation. "Target lock confirmed," her weapons officer reported. "Antimatter warheads armed and ready. Reactor overload sequence prepared." Yuna took one last look at the massive alien fleet displayed on her screens. She thought about Earth, about her family living in a coastal city that would probably be one of the first places bombed if the aliens broke through. She thought about all the human ships hiding throughout the system, all the soldiers waiting in defensive positions, all the civilians huddling in shelters. This moment would set the tone for everything that followed. "All ships," she said quietly. "Mark." 50 human vessels activated their engines simultaneously, accelerating toward the alien fleet at velocities that would have torn apart conventional ships. The antimatter reactors that powered them were pushed beyond their safety limits, generating thrusts that approached relativistic speeds. The aliens detected them immediately. By then, it was already too late. Yuna's ship screamed toward the center of the alien formation. Around her, the hull groaned under stress that it was never designed to handle. Alarms sounded throughout the vessel, warning of imminent reactor failure. Her crew maintained their positions, each person focused on their final task. They had all volunteered for this, knowing exactly what it meant. 10 seconds to impact, her navigator reported. His voice steady despite the fact that he was counting down to his own death. The aliens tried to respond. Their point defense systems came online, filling space with energy beams and explosive projectiles. 3 human ships were destroyed before they could reach their targets. But the rest pressed on, and the aliens simply could not stop them all. 5 seconds. 4, 3. Una closed her eyes and thought of home one final time. 2, 1. The antimatter warheads detonated in perfect synchronization with the overloading reactors, creating explosions that released more energy than some stars produced in a year. 50 points of light appeared in the alien formation, each one expanding into a sphere of annihilation that consumed everything within a kilometer radius. The carefully organized fleet formation dissolved into chaos as ships were destroyed or disabled. As debris and radiation spread through their ranks in the first 60 seconds of battle, humanity destroyed over 300 alien vessels and damaged twice that many. The cost was 50 human ships and 1,000 human lives, but the effect was far greater than simple math could measure. The aliens had expected to sweep through the system with minimal resistance. Instead, they had been bloodied before they even reached the outer planets. On Mars, Admiral Minho watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Send the signal to all forces. They have seen our teeth. Now let them see our claws. The human fleet that had been waiting near Mars activated their engines and moved to intercept the alien forces. It was not a large fleet by galactic standards, barely 200 ships of varying classes, most of them outdated by Galactic Council standards. But they had been retrofitted with every experimental weapon and defensive system that human engineers could devise. And more importantly, they were crewed by people who knew they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. The 2 fleets met near Jupiter's orbit in a battle that turned the vacuum of space into a hellscape of energy beams and explosions. The aliens had superior technology, better shields, more powerful weapons. But the human ships fought with a recklessness that violated every tactical principle that aliens understood. A human destroyer, its engines damaged and its shields failing, rammed directly into an alien cruiser at full speed. Both ships were destroyed instantly. An alien commander watching from his flagship could not understand what he was seeing. Why would the humans waste a ship and crew on such a pointless gesture? But it was not pointless. The cruiser had been coordinating the alien formation in that sector. Its destruction created a gap that human fighters exploited. Swarming through to attack vulnerable vessels behind the main line, General Sun He, coordinating the battle from Mars, understood something the aliens did not. Humanity was not trying to win this fight through superior tactics or technology. They were trying to break the aliens' will to continue. Every sacrifice, every desperate attack, every moment of reckless courage was designed to make the aliens question whether victory was worth the cost. The battle raged for hours, then days. Human ships fought until their weapons ran out, then rammed enemy vessels. Pilots whose craft were damaged ejected in escape pods, only to be picked up by other human ships and sent back into the fight in spare fighters. Crew members with no military training took positions at weapon stations when trained personnel were killed. Learning on the job how to fire guns and launch missiles, the aliens were shocked by the intensity of human resistance. The Quilnuk's hive mind, which had never experienced fear in its million-year existence, began to feel something new. A discord in their collective consciousness that they could not name but that spread like poison through their ranks. The Vethra, whose crystalline bodies normally glowed with steady light, began to flicker and dim as their confidence was shaken. Lieutenant Bora piloted her fighter through a field of debris that had once been both human and alien ships. Her fighter had been hit 3 times, and half her systems were offline. She should have retreated to rearm and repair. But there were no more fighters in reserve, no more pilots waiting to take her place. If she left the battle, it was one less ship harassing the alien fleet. She spotted an alien frigate that had separated from the main formation, probably trying to flank the human defensive line. Her targeting computer was damaged, so she had to line up the shot manually, judging distance and trajectory by eye. She fired her last missile and watched it streak toward the frigate. The aliens shot it down before it reached their shields. But the explosion created a debris cloud that blocked their sensors for a few seconds. That was all the time that Bora needed. She pushed her failing engines to maximum and dove through the debris cloud, emerging directly in front of the frigate before they could react. At point-blank range, she at every weapon she had left, pouring energy and projectiles into the same spot on their shields until they collapsed. Then she aimed for their engine section and fired until her guns overheated and locked up. The frigate tried to bring its own weapons to bear, but it was too slow. Bora's fighter, now completely out of ammunition and with failing engines, became her final weapon. She aimed for the damaged section she had created and accelerated. The impact was not as dramatic as the antimatter explosions that had started the battle. Just one small ship hitting one larger ship, but the damage was catastrophic. Her fighter's remaining reactor breached, creating a chain reaction that tore through the frigate's engine compartment. The alien ship lost power, lost propulsion, and began tumbling through space, effectively out of the battle. Bora did not survive to see her victory. But her sacrifice was witnessed by dozens of other human pilots, and it reinforced the lesson that everyone was learning. In this war, every human was willing to trade their life for even small damage to the enemy. And when facing an opponent with that level of commitment, superior technology only went so far. The alien fleet continued its advance, but now it was cautious, moving slowly, maintaining tight defensive formations. They had lost thousands of ships. They had suffered casualties that would normally cause a fleet to retreat and regroup. But they had their orders from the Galactic Council. They pressed on toward Earth. Engineer Taijin watched their approach from his control center deep underground. The planetary defense grid was fully charged and ready. Hidden across Earth's surface were hundreds of weapon emplacements that the aliens did not know existed. But Taijin knew it would not be enough. The alien fleet had been bloodied, but it was still massive, still powerful enough to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers.
Sir,
one of his technicians said quietly. The alien fleet will be in range of Earth's orbit in 6 hours. Dr. Jisoo is asking if we should activate the Cascade Network. Taijin thought about the experimental quantum system that would trap the aliens in the solar system with them. It was risky, untested, and might kill everyone involved. But if they did not activate it, the aliens would be able to call for reinforcements to bring in more fleets until humanity was completely crushed. Tell Dr. Jisoo to begin activation sequence, Taijin said. If they want to destroy us, they will have to do it face to face, with no way to escape the consequences. As the alien fleet approached Earth, preparing for what they thought would be the final assault, humanity prepared to spring its last trap. The Cascade Network hummed to life across the solar system. Quantum generators activating in sequence, building toward a moment that would change everything. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the cage you build for others becomes your own prison. The alien fleet reached Earth's orbit with over 7,000 ships still combat capable. They had lost nearly a third of their original force. Casualties that would normally be unthinkable for the disciplined military forces of the Galactic Council. But they were committed now, driven by a mixture of anger, fear, and the absolute need to prove that no species could defy the Council and survive. High Arbiter. Velthraxis observed the blue-green planet below from his command. Shippen felt something he had not experienced in centuries of life. Doubt. The battle to reach this point had cost far more than any projection had suggested. Human resistance had been fierce beyond all reasonable expectation. But surely, he told himself, the worst was over. Surely humanity would surrender, now that their homeworld was under the guns of thousands of warships. He broadcast a message toward Earth, his crystalline voice carrying the weight of authority accumulated over millennia. Humans of Earth, this is your final opportunity. Surrender now and accept modification. We will spare your planet and your species. Continue to resist and we will be forced to bombard your cities until nothing remains. You have 1 hour to respond. In the underground command center, Commander Jiwan listened to the ultimatum with a grim expression. Around her, the military leadership waited for her response. General Sun He stood ready to give the order to activate the planetary defense grid. Admiral Minho was already coordinating the few dozen human ships that remained combat-capable. Dr. Jisoo had her hand hovering over the control that would activate the Cascade network. Dr. Jisoo, Guan said quietly, "Do it now." Across the solar system, quantum field generators that had been placed at strategic positions over the past century activated simultaneously. The effect was not visible at first, just subtle distortions in space-time that most sensors could not even detect. But as the generators reached full power, reality itself began to change. The alien fleet's faster-than-light sensors suddenly went dark. Navigation officers on every ship reported the same impossible readings. Every FTL jump point, every hyperspace pathway, every method of traveling faster than light had simply vanished. Space-time had been warped in a way that made it impossible to leave the solar system through any conventional means. Panic spread through the alien fleet. As commanders realized what had happened, they were trapped. Trapped in a system with an enemy that had already proven willing to die rather than surrender, and now there was no way to call for reinforcements, no way to retreat if the situation became untenable. Velthraxis felt true fear for the first time in his very long life. "What have they done?" He whispered. Dot's response came through every communication channel the aliens were monitoring. "You wanted to cage us. Now we cage together. You will destroy us, or we will destroy you. But either way, none of us are leaving this system until this is over. Welcome to our home." Admiral Minho gave the order for the remaining human fleet to attack. Every ship that could still fly, every pilot who could still fight, launched themselves at the alien fleet with renewed ferocity. They were not trying to win anymore, just trying to inflict as much damage as possible before they were destroyed. But the real surprise came from Earth itself. Engineer Taijin activated the planetary defense grid, and hidden weapon emplacements rose from beneath the surface of every continent. Energy weapons powered by zero-point reactors opened fire on the alien fleet in orbit. Beams of concentrated energy that could punch through shields designed to stop conventional attacks. Missiles with advanced guidance systems launched in waves, thousands of them. Each one capable of tracking a target through evasive maneuvers. The battle for Earth began in earnest. Alien ships returned fire, their weapons creating explosions on the planet's surface that could be seen from space. Cities burned. Millions died in the first minutes as orbital bombardment struck population centers. But humanity did not stop fighting. For every human installation destroyed, 10 missiles were launched. For every city that fell silent, another weapon emplacement activated. The alien fleet tried to maintain formation, tried to coordinate their assault, but the Quilnuck's hive mind was failing. The collective consciousness that normally allowed them to act, its perfect unity, was fragmenting under the stress of sustained combat and the growing fear of being trapped. Individual Quilnuck ships began making mistakes, moving out of position. Firing at targets already destroyed while ignoring new threats, High Arbiter Velthraxis tried to restore order, broadcasting commands to the entire fleet, but his own species was struggling. The Vethra had never faced an enemy that refused to acknowledge their superiority. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption that older, more advanced species had the right to guide younger ones. But humanity was rejecting that assumption with violence, and the Vethra did not know how to process this challenge to their worldview. On Mars, a young tactical officer named Hyunwoo was studying the patterns of the alien fleet movements. He had been watching the battle unfold on his displays, tracking every ship, every engagement, every maneuver, and he had noticed something. "Admiral Minho," he said urgently, "I have found a pattern. The alien fleet is protecting specific vessels. Look at how the formation changes when these ships are threatened. They pull other vessels out of position to shield them." Minho leaned over to study Hyunwoo's analysis. The young officer was right. Scattered throughout the alien fleet were roughly 20 ships that were clearly more important than the others. Command vessels, probably, or ships carrying the leaders of each species contingent. "If we could destroy those ships," Hyunwoo continued, "the fleet coordination would collapse completely. They would lose the ability to function as a unified force. That would require concentrating our entire remaining fleet in one attack, Minho said slowly. We would take catastrophic losses. Most of our ships would not survive. Most of our ships will not survive anyway, Hyun-woo replied bluntly. But this way, our deaths might actually matter. Minho looked at the young officer for a long moment, seeing in his face the same determination that he had seen in every human involved in this desperate battle. They all knew they were going to die. They just wanted to make it count. Send the order to all remaining vessels, Minho said. We are going to execute a single, concentrated strike on the alien command cluster. All ships are to target these specific vessels and ignore everything else. This is our final play. Across the solar system, every human ship that could still fight received the order. Captain Somin, commanding the carrier Indomitable Spirit, read the message and felt a cold certainty settle over her. This was it, the final gamble. Every ship, every pilot, every weapon they had left would be thrown at the alien command vessels in one desperate strike. She addressed her crew over the internal communications. Everyone understands what we are about to do. We are going to fly directly into the center of the alien fleet. We will not survive. But if we can destroy their command structure, if we can break their ability to coordinate, then maybe the forces defending Earth will have a chance. Maybe our families will live one more day. That is all we can hope for now. One more day? Her crew did not respond with cheers or defiant shouts. They simply went to their stations and prepared for the final battle. They were beyond fear, beyond hope. Operating now on pure determination to make their deaths meaningful, the human fleet, reduced to barely 50 combat-capable vessels, formed up and began their attack run. They did not try to be subtle or clever. They simply accelerated toward the center of the alien fleet at maximum speed, weapons firing continuously, shields pushed to their limits. The aliens saw them coming and moved to intercept, but they were too slow. The human ships were already moving at velocities that made evasive maneuvers nearly impossible. They crashed through the alien formation like arrows shot from a bow. And every human captain knew exactly where they were going. Captain Summon's carrier took hit after hit as she drove toward the largest of the protected vessels, the flagship of High Arbiter Velthraxis. Her shields failed. Her engines were damaged. Her ship was dying around her, but she kept going. When her main weapons were destroyed, she launched every fighter and bomber she had left, sending them ahead to clear a path. One of those fighters was piloted by Lieutenant Bora's wingmate, a young pilot named Sora, who had watched her friend die earlier in the battle. Sora's fighter was already damaged, her cockpit partially decompressed, but she had sealed her helmet and kept fighting. Now, she found herself approaching the alien flagship with nothing but a determination to honor. Bora's sacrifice. The flagship's shields were powerful. Protected by dozens of smaller vessels that formed a defensive screen around it, Sora's fighter was hit multiple times as she approached, each impact tearing away more of her already damaged craft. Her wings were gone. Her weapons were destroyed. But her reactor was still functional and she still had control. She thought of Bora ramming that frigate. She thought of Captain Yuna and the stealth fleet sacrificing themselves at the battle's start. She thought of every human who had died in this war, every person who had chosen death over submission. And she pushed her dying fighter toward the flagship's shield generators with every bit of thrust she could, coax from her failing engines. The impact was small, barely noticeable among all the other explosions and energy beams filling space around the flagship. But Sora's fighter had struck at exactly the right moment, hitting a shield generator that had already been weakened by the combined fire of human bombers. The generator failed, and for just a moment, a small section of the flagship's shields collapsed. It was only a few seconds, but a few seconds was enough. Human bombers poured through the gap, firing everything they had directly at the flagship's hull. Explosions rippled across the surface of the massive vessel, and somewhere deep inside, critical systems began to fail. High Arbiter Velthraxis felt his ship dying around him and realized that humanity had never intended to win this battle through superior strategy or technology. They had simply intended to make victory so costly that it became indistinguishable from defeat. and in that moment trapped in a solar system with no way to escape, watching his flagship break apart. He understood why his species had been so afraid of humanity all along. The alien fleet scattered like frightened animals when their flagship exploded, without High Arbiter Velthraxis to coordinate the attack, without the command vessels that had been destroyed in humanity's final desperate assault. The unified force that had seemed so unstoppable began to fall apart. Different species started following different priorities. The Quilnick ships, their hive mind completely fragmented by fear and confusion, began firing at anything that moved, including their own allies. The Vethra vessels dimmed their lights and attempted to retreat to the outer system, forgetting that the Cascade network had trapped them here with no way to escape. From Earth's surface, Engineer Taijin watched the chaos unfold on his tactical displays. The planetary defense grid was still operational, despite taking heavy damage from the orbital bombardment. He gave the order for all remaining weapons to focus fire on the ships that were trying to regroup. Humanity had lost over half their population in the bombing, entire cities reduced to radioactive craters. But the survivors were still fighting. Admiral Min Ho, coordinating from Mars, sent out the final order to any human vessel that could still move. All ships pursue and destroy. Give them no time to recover, no chance to reorganize. This is our moment. But even as he gave the order, Minho knew that humanity had already paid a price that could never be recovered. Earth was devastated. Mars had taken damage from stray fire during the battle. The orbital habitats around Jupiter and Saturn were destroyed. Billions of humans were dead. The question was no longer whether humanity would win, but whether there would be enough humans left to matter if they did win. 3 weeks passed. The alien fleet, trapped in the solar system by the Cascade network, tried repeatedly to find a way to escape or to regroup for another assault on Earth. But every attempt was met by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Small patrol craft ambushed alien vessels attempting to mine asteroids for resources. Hidden weapons platforms struck at any ship that tried to establish a defensive position. And always, there were more humans willing to sacrifice themselves to destroy. It's just one more alien vessel. The breaking point came when the Dormothi, the aquatic species whose form existed and contained fields of water, released their biological weapons. Clouds of microscopic machines designed to consume organic matter spread through space. Targeting the remaining human ships and stations, it was an act of desperation. A violation of galactic law so severe that it would normally result in immediate council sanctions. But humanity's response proved why biological weapons were banned in the first place. Unable to stop the nanite clouds with conventional weapons, the humans used nuclear explosives, creating waves of electromagnetic pulses and radiation that destroyed the nanites but also sterilized vast regions of space. The Dormothi vessels, not designed to operate in such extreme radiation environments, began to fail. Their containment fields destabilized. Their crews died as their life. Support systems collapsed. Other alien species watched the Dormothi die and realized that humanity was willing to turn their own solar system into an uninhabitable wasteland rather than surrender. This was not warfare as the Galactic Council understood it. This was mutual destruction elevated to an art form. Commander Giwan, working from a bunker deep beneath Earth's ruined surface, received a communication from an unexpected source. It was a Vethra subcommander named Kethera, speaking without authorization from what remained of the alien fleet's leadership. Commander Giwan, the alien's translated voice, was filled with something that sounded like exhaustion. We cannot win this war. You cannot win this war. We are all dying here, trapped in this system with no escape and no hope. Is this what you wanted? Is mutual extinction your victory? Jiwon thought carefully before responding. She looked around at the command center where she stood, at the tired faces of the officers who had been fighting for weeks without rest, at the casualty reports that kept climbing with no end in sight. We did not want this, she said finally. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to remain who we are. You forced this choice upon us. You said we could be modified or we could die. We chose to die free rather than live as something else. And if we are dying anyway, We decided to make you understand the cost of forcing that choice upon us." There was a long silence. Then Kethera spoke again. "What would it take for this to end? What would satisfy humanity now?" "Withdraw your fleet to the edge of the system," Giwan said. "Stop all hostile actions. We will deactivate the Cascade Network and allow you to leave. In return, the Galactic Council will formally recognize humanity's sovereignty and our right to exist unchanged. You will lift the quarantine. You will never again attempt to modify, contain, or threaten our species, and you will pay reparations for the damage you have inflicted on our world." Yeah. Council will never agree to pay reparations to a species that has destroyed thousands of their ships. Then we continue fighting until there is nothing left of any of us. Giwan replied calmly. "Your choice." 3 days later, what remained of the alien fleet withdrew to the outer system and requested formal negotiations. The war had lasted less than 2 months, but it had cost the Galactic Council over 8,000 ships and hundreds of thousands of personnel. Humanity had lost billions of civilians, most of their military forces, and their homeworld was barely habitable. But they